What sets flourishing new worshiping communities apart is their ability to tell with confidence their story, their vision, and invite people in. And number two, to create a culture that from the very beginning, and particularly in those beginning years, creates and experiments and tries out different funding experimentation. I've spoken to new worshiping communities, one of which was entirely funded by Kickstarter campaigns. Not a single other way of raising money, though they tried. But the Kickstarter campaigns, in the end, wound up being their most effective fundraiser. We've talked to new worshiping communities that have started businesses. And this is a tricky one because in order to start a business and generate that kind of income to support your new worshiping community, the business that you start actually has to be a part of the vision and mission of your community. Otherwise, the IRS will decide you are not a nonprofit anymore and you will be paying a remarkable number of taxes on it. But looking around and seeing something in particular that a community is good at. We have one community that is baking bread and selling it, and that supports a significant portion of their budget. There's another community I know where they are craft beer people, and they have access to a warehouse that is on the Beltline where people bike and run and exercise all around Atlanta. And on the Beltline, people also love to stop in for a drink or some light snacks. And so they have started first, a new worshiping community, but second, their craft beers and it's not really a restaurant. It's not really a bar. It's what?
Pub?
Maybe, yeah. I think they'd call it a pub. They call it the Joint. Nonetheless, their neighborhood gathering space, their neighborhood pub is there for both neighbors, and it really is owned and frequented by the neighborhood, but also by all the people stopping by on the Beltline. They have created a business that helps fund their new worshiping community. That's not for everyone, and there are certainly a lot of legal pieces to look at with that, but the kinds of experimentation that can happen are legion.
The financial piece is critical to the work of a new worshiping community. And we, I think, in the church world are often taught not to talk about money because it's dirty or otherworldly or too worldly or secular. And I think that is a mistake. To abandon it is to remove any sense of faith from the responsible stewardship of resources. So being able to talk about money faithfully, because if we really do believe that God is sovereign over everything that we have and everything that we own as well. So we need to have that faith inform how we use those gifts. We have not used a traditional stewardship model. We have leaned more into the crowdfunding model, which is very successful for the startup phase. We were able to raise enough money to buy the equipment for me to be able to provide myself with a small stipend to pay for some of our partnerships in order to pay them fairly as well. Out of the startup phase, we moved into a little bit more of a traditional stewardship model by direct mail, by knowing who some of our listeners are and reaching out to them and asking them for donations a couple of times a year, and they respond. I think one of the things that has been challenging for us is we have also sought funding from congregations, and they're not always on board with what we do because it's so non-traditional. They don't quite understand what it is that we're doing, and even the work of trying to interpret that can be challenging. And then it becomes a question of time and energy and resources in that regard. Is it worth our time to over and over again explain what it is that we do and how it fits into the church? Or do we lean into those places where people already get it and are excited about it and are willing to support that? I think one of the questions that we are wrestling with right now is the long-term financial sustainability. Being part of the 1001 movement has given us access to the granting money that the General Assembly gives. And so we are leaning into the latest round of giving in order to explore that very question. Is this a financially sustainable model outside of grant money? If it is not, then what do we need to do to shift, to bring it to a close, to find alternative ways of funding it? It could be a hybrid where it is a production company that does podcasts and then this is our give back to society. It could be that this is rooted through me, that I am doing my work and I am a tent maker minister of sorts, where I am finding my streams of income elsewhere and then putting my donated time and resources into AI JCast? It's an open question for us right now. I think the ability to shift and to ask that question, though, is crucial, and not to keep going back to the same platforms again and again and again, recognizing that things have changed, that crowdfunding works, and there's going to be a time when crowdfunding doesn't work. And so finding what is the thing that works now.
So at Shalom, we have tried, different funding experimentation. And I'm thinking of when we got into the second or third year, we had an idea of sending our youth to Montreat during the summer for the youth conference. So that was really a brilliant idea, but we needed to find ways to pay for that. So we started with what about if we experiment about silent auction? So we collaborated with our partner churches to say what are some of the things that you have maybe in your house that maybe you're not using, or we have a list of these things, can you purchase, and we can do a silent auction. And we did that. It was very successful. This year we sent our youth to Montreat with that kind of finding. And then we try another one looking at the skills and gift that we have at Shalom. So Shalom is very diverse, so people speak different languages, and they have different skills. So one time we did an experiment of communicating with our partners and say, if somebody needs babysitting, we'll offer this amount of hours. If you need some yard to be taken care of, we'll offer these hours. And if you're interested in learning a new language or sharpening your language like French. And I remember there was a family that was trying to travel to France, and they're like, oh yeah, this summer as a family we are going to France, so maybe we need lessons on French, just basics. So all that putting together, it was a good funding experiment. We tried again with we call it Presbyterian Got Talent. So inviting different singing group or people who have got talent, who can do poem or recital, play piano, all kind of talent and skill that people have, and we brought all those together and did a fundraising, and it was amazing. We've been doing it, I think, twice. I think we tried another funding experiment which did not work. It was like a Giving Tuesday. So we said, okay, this is a day where people give to different organizations, but we tried that one. I think it was maybe timing and also preparing advertising or putting the word out, I would say. So that did not work. We set a goal, but it was very, very low. So it was a learning process. So there are different ways. We also send mail to donors and share about what God is doing in the community, and ask if they could contribute, and you'll be surprised what you get. So another funding experiment that we've tried at Shalom is the fashion show. So when we gathered to say how are we going to raise money to support our ministries, and then we came to say, we have members who have come from different part of the world, and the way people dress, even like this, it is linked to people's culture. So we say, okay, we have a student from Burma, Bhutan, Nepal, and they have like their traditional clothes, and then we have other people who've come from like Cameroon, Nigeria. So, and then we put that together and did a fashion show. It was really great, from seeing little kids and youth and adult, and the variation of colors, and then we invited different partner churches to come and participate. It was just amazing to see how we raise money through that. And also we did another one, Ultimate Frisbee tournament. So we collaborated with a school in Atlanta, Padea, and they have a team, and they're very good with Ultimate Frisbee, and they come and also volunteer and play with the kids at our after-school program. So like, oh, we might do a tournament and also invite the community, and then we do raffle and all that. Just ways that we raise money and funding for different ministries. So as I reflect on this, is just how can we think out of the box? Because many times we just limit ourselves to say, oh yeah, I'll send letters, or I'll make a phone call. But there are so creative ways, many, that we can put our mind, heart together and find ways to support ministries, because there is the need of the community, ministries that needs to happen, but they also find ways to support those ministries through funding. Yeah.
So, as I told you, buy a lottery. That's the easiest way to fund. But so I think the first one is effort, luck, and network, I believe. So I cannot say I earned the fund because I tried too hard. I cannot say that, because everybody try hard to do something hard to get the fund. But thankfully, I was able to have a chance to meet some big supporter through my network. So I just share my vision, so the people that I know, that I have known, and ask them to help, ask them consider making some connection or contribution to my ministry. 1 out of 100, that was my rate. So I got a one success, so out of 100 try. So keep doing, keep asking, and then keep writing letters to the people and then to the potential supporter. And we don't know where the God's hands will come through. Just I can say that was lucky. In Christian version, I can say that's the grace of God. But most of the support came through the network, through the relationship that I had built up before. So it is hard to ask people, but try to find your network and a relationship, and then share your vision. So for me, I had wrote a bunch of letters. So I cannot count it. Just write it and write it and write it, and then wait for their response. So there are a bunch of failed, but I had some success. And then try to meet up people, the 3 or 4 at least every week, and try to schedule to meet up with them, and then share your passion. And then with that, I just did tent making. So I had a passion and I have some talent on taking photo. So I offered them taking photo for their professional headshot or wedding or ceremony. And then they can make a donation to the church, not in my pocket. So that it worked well. But writing letter or meet up, that was hard, but that is more provide consistent and continuous support.
I think utilizing the gifts that you have for fundraising I think are really important. Again, I'm a musician. So even in my early days of youth ministry, we would put on concerts and have sort of like a, multi-genre concert and raise $4,000 or $5,000. I mean, that's seed money, but it's something. I think also doing matching grants are really important to say, okay, here's a donor who will give if other people will connect. And I think it's a way to value every gift, be it large or small, because it's just showing that no matter what, I mean, we know the story of the widow's mite. People were putting in large sums of money, which did not really equate with the woman who gave sacrificially. So without passing judgment, to say there is no gift too large or too small, there is no ask too big or too small. So I think being creative with the stuff that you can do. Again, exposure to the community and getting people, I like when people use the language of fundraisers, right? Like, make it fun. Like, how do you say, this is one big party, or this is what I call like this tsunami of gifts that are happening. So I really think that the gifts that you have, look at them and see how can these gifts that we have that are already in our space, whatever they are, pull people in to say, let's pull our efforts together for fundraising. There are so many creative ways that you can utilize your gifts to raise money to support mission for the kingdom.
It is very important that you know people of means. And if you don't know people of means, become their friends. Because there's a lot of wealth in the world. And you know what? God would probably rather have it be spent in your new worshiping community than on Amazon. And so finding people in your life or in your networks that have resources, because God is calling them to spend those resources in specific ways. And that might be you. And to not be afraid of that. And so asking for funding from people who you know have funding and who also have a passion for what you're doing. Because if they know you and they know your story, they're much more likely to give you funding. At the very beginning, we did have quite a few people who knew our story and believed in us and had means and decided that it was worth the risk and the creativity to put it into our community. One of our main sources of funding is we rent out the spaces we can to people in the neighborhood, and that looks really different. We have sometimes the PTA rents out space, sometimes birthday parties. Last year, one of the neighbors turned 100 and she had her birthday party in the fellowship hall. Even during the pandemic, we've had people rent the parking lot to do ballet classes, things like that. And so we have leveraged marketing and renting ourselves out to the neighborhood for the activities that they can't fit in their tiny bungalow cottage. A lot of them have kids that have won a 15-kid birthday party, and we have become the birthday party place. People rent us out. So we have somebody part-time who does our office work, and that's part of her job, is she does the paperwork and the payment processing and rents out the different spaces and makes sure the calendar is set. So one of our alternative forms of funding is to rent out the spaces we have. I think that lots of new worshiping communities have lots of different assets. And so doing kind of an asset assessment of what can you use other than simply asking for money from your congregation or finding sponsors. And for us, one of the biggest answers to that question is, well, we can rent out the space we have.
Currently, we are bivocational, and so we have other jobs that pay the majority of our salaries and needs currently as we're continuing to grow this. Once we are able to launch out into a full gym and have a lot more members, then that will kind of replace our full-time jobs. But at the same time, we're going to be offering access to folks who can't afford what CrossFit typically costs. And so we'll be looking at fundraising like a lot of folks in nonprofits do. One thing, locating ourselves within the broader CrossFit community allows us to have a big network from which to pull from. And for so many folks that have been a part of CrossFit, they're part of it because, like myself, it changed my life. And to know that I can give so that someone who probably wouldn't be able to afford it or have access because of transportation or because of cultural differences, to be able to be a part of it, I think is something that people are really interested in. And we've seen that so far. One of our first kind of initiatives with some refugees that we're training, we had 3 younger Syrian refugee guys we were training with, and we were just getting started in our garage, and we didn't have any rowers. And if you have any preconception of what CrossFit is, rowing is a big part of it. And so we just did a Facebook fundraiser to raise money for 2 rowers, which they're not cheap. It's about $2,200 for 2 rowers. And we raised all that in about 24 hours. And so that just shows the desire within the CrossFit community to give back. As their lives are changed by CrossFit, they're giving back and helping us do what we do. And so funding from individuals, through foundations. Again, I think for us, having a new worshiping community as a business also allows us to have some different inroads in the community and funding models too. There are some places that won't give to religious institutions, but might give to what we're doing by providing health and nutrition